Dear chess friends, probably many of us are bothered by the endgame stage. The endgame stage is, of course, the most complex stage in the chess game, and many times I ask myself the question, why is the endgame so complicated? Why isn't the middle game so complicated? Why isn't maybe the opening so complicated? In my opinion, the endgame stage is so complicated because you have to really calculate everything. Because in the opening, you have, I think, some cool books, you have, I think, decent preparations, you have great explanations how to play the opening, and in the middle game stage, basically many times you rely on certain patterns that can happen. For instance, there is this pattern of the isolated pawn, and there are certain rules how to play the isolated pawn game. There are also this bad bishop strategies. There are certain rules how to play the bad bishop strategy. There is this endangered king position. Then we know that we have to attack the king further. So there are certain rules about the middle game stage, but sometimes the end game stage doesn't have any rules. You have to calculate everything, and that's, I think, something that bothers us in the end game stage. And one of the rare players, I think, that love to play the endgame is, of course, the world champion Magnus Carlsen. There's simply no better player in history that played the beautiful endgames. And here I found really a beautiful game that was played in 2017 between Liren with the white pieces and Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. And it's also part of our preparation of the Catalan Opening that I've started recently. If you have followed maybe my YouTube chess channel, we have started this Catalan Opening series, and I did a preparation. I did an analysis about the particular sideline, and then I came up to this game, and I think it's a great game that has, of course, a theoretical value of the Catalan Opening, but it has also cool tactical ideas of the endgame stage. So in my opinion, really a game worth the study. So let's see now the game. Ding Liren here with the white pieces against Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. Ding opened with the move d4. We have now the move knight to f6, c4, and after e6 we have now the move g3. This is now the accelerated Catalan setup. We're playing bishop to g2 immediately. Magnus plays d5, locks the center now after bishop to g2, bishop to b4. A very important move, very important position, so very important intermediate check, which is creating development problems for white. White has now certain ideas how to continue. Of course, bishop to d2, knight to c3, and knight to d2 are the main options how to cover the king. So here Ding went for this line, knight to d2. We have discussed this line in my previous video about the Catalan Opening. Here's the link of the video, you can also check it out. Here after move knight to d2, we can say that really the knight is not on the optimal score. So the knight is not supposed to be here. The knight should be, of course, on a more active score on c3. So that's the cool part about this move, bishop to b4. It slows down the progress of white on the queen side. So here Magnus Carlsen, we have now knight to f3, and there are basically now two approaches with a similar idea that you can play now from black's perspective. You can play d takes c4, which creates ideas of the open Catalan battle, or you can play this move b6 that Magnus will play now. With this move b6 is, of course, a preparation to play bishop to b7 and compete for the e4 square. There is now really a tension around the square e4. The bishop is attacking the knight on d2 that is controlling the e4. The knight is controlling the e4 square, and also the bishop on b7 in the continuation will control the e4 square. It's simply a battle for this square. Whenever you get challenged, this is something that you have to memorize. When you get challenged with moves like a3 by white, you should give up the bishop for a knight. Don't hesitate. Don't be scared to give up your bishop in an early stage of the game, because in the beginning, as I said, it's simply a battle for the e4 square. You're trying to get rid of any piece that's controlling this very important central square. So in the continuation, kingside castling, we have now bishop to b7. As I said, when you get a3, bishop takes d2, and still we have a great grip around the square e4. Here Ding plays b3. Magnus uses now this moment, uses actually the lack of development a little bit here by white. The bishop will eventually get on b2, but as I said, the knight on d2 is not really on the optimal square. White would love, of course, to have now the knight on c3 instead of on d2. Here after bishop to b2, Magnus goes with knight to d7, and after move a3, as we said, when we get challenged, we take out the knight immediately. Knight to d2, now c takes d4. After bishop to d4, we have now rook to c1, and there is now a beautiful also tension around the square c4, but also around the square d5. We cannot pick up the pawn on c4 immediately from black's perspective here, because the bishop on b7 would be then hanging. So in the continuation, we have b4 by Ding, we have queen to e7, finishing the development, connecting now the rooks on the 8th rank, and now comes rook to c1. We have rook to d8, indirectly, of course, hitting the queen. The queen is so far not endangered, but because of the tension here on the d file, if something gets cleared, then the queen, but also the bishop on d4 could be endangered. And here Ding makes maybe his first, maybe tiny little inaccuracy in the game. He plays queen to b3, allowing this d takes c4 idea to trade off here finally the light square bishops. In the Catalan opening, the light square bishop is of course the best piece of whites. So with this tempo, Magnus Carlsen gets out of this mess, and I think he has now a decent really position. So instead of this move queen to b3, maybe a better way to go is to play c takes d5. It forces maybe this idea bishop to d5, and actually with the move e4, white can stay very active. The cool part about this line is that white is keeping both of the bishops on the board. So white is keeping the beautiful bishop pair. Nothing spectacular also in this position. White, pardon me, black will retreat and similar stuff. But in my opinion, it keeps the game more dynamic. It keeps the game more complicated. And you want to, of course, complicate things when you're playing with the beautiful bishop pair. So in my opinion, maybe this was the first sort of positional slight inaccuracy by Ding Liren, although this move is not evaluated as a mistake or something by some engines. But I kind of don't like this move, because it gives now Magnus Carlsen the opportunity to simplify the game, as I said, and now he hits the center with the move e5. He gets his pawn rolling, and now he plays queen to e6. Every move that Magnus Carlsen played now was really forced. We have now also the pin against the knight. The queen is a little bit overloaded. So far, I think Magnus is getting out. Magnus can breathe again in this particular position. So here, after move rook from f to d1 was played by Ding, knight to f8, controlling of course the d file. We have rook to d8, rook takes d8, and after queen to f3, now we have rook to c8. So Magnus again creates some tensions, creates some pinnings here on the c file. We have knight to e3, rook to c1, and after bishop to c1, we have now the move e4. Notice how Magnus Carlsen deflected the bishop from the attack on the knight on f6. Now when that happened, he can roll with the move e4, because previously, of course, also the knight could be in danger. So now white will need to play at least one more time with the bishop in order to attack the knight on f6. So here the queen has to step back. Ding plays queen to f4. We have queen to a2. Interesting idea, attacking both of the pawns, but Ding does the same. Ding also occupies now the 7th rank. Magnus has occupied the 2nd rank, and both players have of course weaknesses in the position. So now of course both players are attacking their opponent's weaknesses. So in the continuation, queen to e2, queen to a7, and now Magnus makes a huge choice. He launches the flank attack with the move h5, and this is the way to go. I think the position is about equal, nothing spectacular. Of course, if you play this kind of an endgame in a perfect way, this should end in a draw, but we know this 0.0 Magnus Carlsen endgames turning many times in different ways. So here, after move h5, notice that actually white has here a lack of defenders. If the knight would be on f3, this would be perfectly fine. The knight would control, of course, the potential h4 progress. You can play, of course, now h4, but it leads again into complications. Queen to f3 is going to happen. Maybe later this knight will be included in the game. Knight to g4 is also an opportunity. At least I think you're holding this position with the move h4, but Ding went into this line. He simply grabbed the pawn. Queen takes b6. Magnus continues now the pressure with h4. If g takes h4 happens, then we have of course many of these light square problems in front of the king. We have queen to c6. So now Ding is saying, I grabbed enough material. I will try now to get back with the queen into the game, maybe even trade it off and just push this pawn further. But as I said, this is really a brilliant endgame that Magnus Carlsen played. Now Magnus goes with knight to g4, gets rid of the last defender of the king. After queen to g4, we have queen to c4, h3 a check, king to g1, and now after knight to g6, Magnus includes now the last piece into the attack. He wants to now search, of course, for opportunities for the knight, especially here on light squares on f3, maybe also on this weak square on e2. So bishop to e3. Now Magnus gets the knight into the game. We have queen to f1. You have to now get the queen queen into the defense. Knight to f3 by Magnus. We have king to h1, and now knight to e5. We have now b5, and now Magnus noticed, of course, that the knight should get back into the game. Because if the pawns maybe get somehow on the 6th rank, this should be game over. But now you see you cannot pick up, of course, the pawn on c4. You get checkmate here with queen to f3. You have this one, and then queen to g2 leads into a forced checkmate sequence. So after move knight to c4 that Magnus Carlsen played here, b6 is not an opportunity, because after queen to f3 we have now this one, knight, king to g1, and after knight to e3, look at this, after e3 and queen to e3 leads now into complications, because you lose also the weak b6 pawn. So it's simply also not working. So Magnus, with this move knight to c4, paralyzed really a little bit here White's position. Basically, White doesn't have a good move here, so it's still equal, but as I said, it's so hard to play now this endgame, so that's why Ding played king to g1. He got his king on a better square, where it's of course not so endangered. The king in the corner was endangered not only on the square g2, was also endangered on the 1st rank, so the queen was always overloaded a little bit to the defense of the king. So now maybe the queen can get out somehow into the game. So in the continuation, we have knight to e3. After f takes e3, Magnus goes with queen to e6, controlling the square b6. We have now the move a4. Magnus gets behind this pawn, and after queen to e1, we have queen takes a4, queen to b1 here by Ding Liren. So he's hoping now to get this pawn further. He applies this Tarash rule, which says that you should bring your rook or the queen behind the pawn, and of course try to promote it. But now comes the tricky part. Magnus goes with queen to a5. He controls further the b6 square, and he's trying to sneak in on the square d2, where he can create maybe a checkmate on g2 again, because the queen is not defending anymore the square g2 from the square f1. Here Ding got a little bit greedy and played now the crucial mistake in the game. He played now the move b6, and this is not working. Ding should have played simply king to f1, getting the king towards the center. The game would probably continue like this with queen to d2. You can pick up this one. Now of course Magnus can pick up also the pawn on h2, and now after a couple of checks, of course the queen can get back into the game, and I think we can always get the queen into the defense and tried maybe to deflect this queen like this, and then maybe also deliver a couple of annoying checks, maybe grab this pawn on h3. When this pawn on h3 is taken, I think White would solve every positional problem in the game. But here after move b6 that Ding Liren played, it's game over actually, because Magnus finds this beautiful queen to d2 method. He's threatening checkmate. Now the queen has to step back, and now we have queen to e3, queen to f2, now a beautiful check, and Magnus goes for this beautiful zigzag motif. He plays another check. You have to cover, but now the pawn is getting in between. The queen has to step back, and now Magnus picks up now the pawn on b6. Really stunning tactical sequence in the endgame stage. And look at this. Magnus has now 4 pawns against Ding Liren's 2 pawns. And this is not only the problem of Ding Liren. Still, White's king is more endangered, we have to say it, than Black's king is. So the queen is again overloaded to the defense of the square g2. If the queen get somehow into the game, then of course there are threats of queen to g2, which leads into a beautiful checkmate. King to f1. Now Magnus goes after queen to e4 again with some ideas of queen to h1, queen to g2. Here king to e2 was played, queen to g2. Now Ding Liren takes. Magnus grabs now this pawn on the h file. We have king to f4, queen to c2, and after move g4, queen to c7 check. We have queen to f3, queen to c6, king to g3, and after queen to g2, king to f4 and h2. In this position, Ding Liren resigns. So there's simply no defense. You can try maybe this kind of a check. We step back, but after queen to f7, the problem is now you get this annoying check, and the queen will be taken on f7. So we have also the potential promotion of this other queen on h1. So this is game over. So incredible game here by Magnus. He really loves to play the endgame stage. I think it's one of the rare players that really love to play the endgame stage. Many of us are, as I said in the beginning, are bothered probably to reach this kind of a position. Many of us would mess this up from White's or from Black's perspective, me included, of course. I'm not really a experienced endgame player, but how Magnus is playing this beautiful stage of the game gives me sometimes confidence that I can do at least something like this sometimes. But here it's a different story. Magnus again pull off the impossible 0.0 endgame into win. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot because we have seen very important strategic ideas of the Catalan opening and also very cool tactical ideas in the endgame stage. And if you want to see more about the Catalan, check out my Catalan opening studies. As I said, we have started this series, very important series here on my YouTube channel. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say. Chess is the best, of course.